Hi, this is Jim Lange. This is the 7th of a series on Roth IRAs and Roth IRA conversions, and specifically under the both existing law and the proposed law, which we refer to as the death of the Stretch IRA. So I went through the concept of purchasing power, which is a critical concept. Then I went through the math, talking about where you would likely end up using certain reasonable assumptions, comparing, let's call it Mr. Status Quo and Mr. Roth IRA conversion. And then we also analyzed the benefits to your children and to your grandchildren. And we also did a couple stories. I told my own Roth IRA story, which was basically that we converted everything that we had when we had the opportunity in 1998. And I told a deathbed Roth IRA conversion story. But those, what I'll call whopper conversions, $1 million conversions, which was the deathbed Roth IRA conversion story, that is not the normal result of our running the numbers. So let me tell you what is probably more common, and let me also talk about when is the best time. So typically, one of the problems with a Roth IRA conversion is it increases not only the tax that you have to pay, but your tax rate. So earlier, for simplicity, I assumed a 25% tax rate. But if you're in the 25% tax bracket and you add an extra $100,000 to your income, you're no longer in the 25% bracket, you're in the 28% bracket. So it might make sense, rather than, and so let's say you're in the 25% bracket, does it make sense for you to do a whopper conversion? And depending on when you're listening to this, what the top rate would be, but let's say it could be in the 40s or 30s, or who knows what's going to happen with the new tax law, which, by the way, is another interesting point regarding Roth IRA conversions, meaning if the tax law is lowered and you make a Roth IRA conversion and then they raise the rates later on, you'll be really happy. But even forgetting that, what we typically recommend is not one big whopper conversion, but a series of small ones, often within the same tax bracket. So let's say you're a 15% taxpayer, and there's, to simplify, there's $7,000 of difference. So let's say what's the top of the 15% bracket? It's somewhere around 67. Let's call it 67 exactly. And let's say that your income, and let's forget about Social Security and some of the other complications, let's say your income is around $60,000. It might make sense for you to do a $7,000 conversion, because that will still keep you within the 15% bracket, where if you did, let's say, a $20,000 conversion, part of that conversion would be taxed at 15%, but part of it would shoot up to 25%. And that probably would not be a good thing, certainly in the short term, and it would take many, many years before you have that break even that I talked about earlier. Now, it might make a little bit more sense to go from the 25% to the 28%, because that isn't quite as big a jump in taxes. But anyway, the typical advice is not to do these big whopper conversions, but typically to do a series of smaller Roth IRA conversions. And that has a couple advantages. Number one, it's going to keep you in a lower tax bracket. And two, we are not machines, we are human animals, and we don't like to write big checks to the IRS. So you have a let's call it a reduced sticker shock syndrome of doing a series of small ones. And I think that that is very important. The other point that I wanted to make on what is probably the best time to make a Roth conversion. Let's assume that you are working and you are at the top of your game and you're making a lot of money and your income is way up here. And let's just say, for discussion's sake, that you're 66 years old, your income is way up here. And your plan is to retire at 66. And let's forget about deferred comp or pensions or anything else. And let's assume that your only income, other than maybe some dividends and interest, was going to be Social Security. And let's assume that you agree with some of my other Social Security strategies and you hold off until age 70. So your income is up here at age 66. Then what happens at 67? Boom! Goes way down. You don't have your income from your wages. You don't have income from Social Security. You don't have income from your minimum required distributions, because you don't have minimum required distributions until you're age 70. So now what happens? You're in a low bracket at 67, low bracket at 68, low bracket at 69. Then what happens when you're 70? Boom! Minimum required distribution. Boom! Social Security with, by the way, a 32% raise for waiting. And all of a sudden, you're in a high tax bracket again. So when do you want to do your Roth IRA conversions if you have that much control? Not when you're in your high bracket while you're still working, not after 70 and you're in a high bracket again. And by the way, after 70, you're likely to be in a high bracket for the rest of your life between the minimum required distributions and the one, or if you're married, two Social Securities. The ideal time to do it is during that window between work, when your income is here, and then your income goes way down, because now you can make a much bigger Roth IRA conversion at a much smaller tax cost. That's going to most likely be your series, the best time to make the series of Roth IRA conversions. Of course, we quantify that, and we actually come up with specific amounts on specific years after running the numbers, but at least conceptually I wanted to go through that. This can really make a difference of hundreds of thousands of dollars, either using the existing law. It will be less of an impact under the proposed law, which we will get into, but it will still make an enormous difference, and it is one of the defenses against the death of the Stretch IRA. I hope this and the entire Roth IRA conversion series has been helpful. Thank you.